Hello, I'm Jane Galbraith, head teacher at Latham High School in Skelmersdale in the northwest of England. I'm here today to talk to you about the role of trauma-informed schools in policing, and want to give you a little bit of background on our school as a starting point, as a point of reference. We're a smaller than average secondary school in the northwest, serving some of the most deprived wards in England, and we serve a school population which has approximately 50% people premium at the current time. This look at trauma-informed work and that development that we've done at school across the last 4 years is very much driven by working alongside the police and alongside public health to look for a vehicle to drive school improvement and community strength and partnerships. What we wanted to do at Latham and in our wider community in Skelmersdale was use trauma-informed practices to look at behaviour management, to look at personal development in a way that would improve behaviour sustainably for both the community and for the school, and in the widest possible sense in our families, and ensure that there was a resilience there to deal effectively with adversity, both in our personal lives and in our educational lives for the children that we serve, without needing to find that they were resorting to violent behaviour or crime. In considering how we would go about that, we work with public health, with Sue Irwin and Embrace, and with our community partners through the police, to very much look at the root causes of issues for our pupils, for their families, and the wider community. We wanted to ensure that we were building strong and positive relationships and developing trust, especially in the wider community, and looking at how those role models available to us in our local area, particularly through the community policing team, could be used to foster those relationships and to improve relationships that were broken at the time of us starting this piece of work. We looked very much at how we could drive at high expectations for all, and by asking why, asking all of the time, why are things happening? Let's understand that, let's show empathy, and then let's examine how it can be better, how it can be improved, not tolerating unacceptable behaviour, but seeking to understand it and work collaboratively to drive improvement in our personal behaviours at every level and in the widest possible sense. And that is what we set out to achieve, wanting to show a level of care, of compassion, but through the highest possible standards. It's very much our belief that the strength and the strongest form of care we can show to our community is to challenge it to the very best it can be and have those high expectations. So what did this look like for us at school, and where was that relationship between the school and policing particularly? Well, it involved us looking at ourselves first and foremost, using a trauma-informed lens very much to look at our own behaviours, our own governance, the way we recruited staff at the school, the way we then did induction with the staff, and how we then use those key people to build our community partnerships. It meant stopping and understanding and developing training for every partner, both in school and in the wider community, to look at how trauma, how adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, affect young people, affect all of us, not just young people, but all of us, in our brain development and our ability to learn, and therefore our ability to regulate our emotions and the way we go about tackling things, but especially things that challenge us or create a sense of adversity. We knew we needed to provide consistent approaches, firm, agreed boundaries, all of which would lead in time to reductions in offending in the community. Boundaries which also gave a sense of care, a sense of belonging, and in these very difficult times at the current moment for us all in this global pandemic, a sense of belonging that goes beyond being actually in the building, but knowing that you've got an attachment to something even when you're not tangibly there. And that's been vital to us in terms of sustaining relationships in periods of lockdown and sustaining productive relationships with our community police officers to support our families whilst they're having to be at home for so much of the time, and helping them to respect the rules of the pandemic, of the lockdown situation in our local area. So very much talking there about the fact the police role here is key. We learn a lot as an organisation, as a school and as a wider community together about restorative approaches. And again, not ever considering this as a soft option, which I know some people see as a tension with trauma-informed practice and high standards, but actually truly restorative, truly thoughtful, responsible approaches here force individuals to look at their own behaviour, take some responsibility for their actions, understand that things go wrong and show a level of tolerance there of the fact we can all make a mistake, but crucially we learn from it for the future. And if we do that and we take prompt and we take positive action together, collaboratively, and we drive our parents to do the same in a secondary school setting with the support of agencies where necessary, we can prevent, or at least strive to prevent, negative and potentially criminal and violent choices in the future. That combination of things, that development of character, of belonging, because if we belong to that something there, we don't seek it out in a criminal organisation or in some way that means we're exploited, because there's something else to believe in and something to hang on to. And alongside all of that, we also have developed massively our careers guidance to look at positive choices for the future, to look at positive role models to ensure a more productive future for our young people to contribute to our local society, to their own communities, and have choices which again take away perhaps the attraction of some of the potentially criminal and violent routes that some of our young people were going down historically. So through doing all of that work and continuing to do that work, because it is ongoing, it is never ever a tick list, what's the impact we've seen over time? Well, the impact we've seen and the connections we can then make back to, we hope in time, the impact on our community policing is that our attendance to school has improved. Our parents are more supportive in our school community of knowing their children need to attend school and at the current time engage with their education whilst away from the building and learning at home. They're more able, they're more resilient, more able to understand and challenge their child's reasons for refusing or avoiding school, and more confident in seeking from us as a school and from other agencies such as the police community safety team and PCSOs that support to help them parent more effectively, to then help their young people be more effective citizens making that contribution. You can see in the slide there significant increases in attendance to school in the academic year 2018-19, so prior to coronavirus hitting us so hard in this last almost 12 months now, but particularly in groups which are deemed vulnerable, such as the disadvantaged and those with additional needs. And that's led us to be able, by having those young people in school and not needing to chase them in, chase their parents up, it's then led us to redirect resources and make better use of resources both in the school and in the community to look at the things I referenced before. So careers lead information, looking at life choices, life chances, reduction in the chances that young people become involved in criminally exploited behaviours. So in school, we've also seen a significant reduction in exclusions from school. Again, a clear link we know over time to criminal behaviour, to behaviour which then presents a challenge to our community police colleagues, is by having young people out of school. And very much by looking through this trauma-informed lens, by looking at the work we've done, by always asking why, and all of those things that I've said, we've been able to reduce exclusions significantly, as you can see from the data there. We've also reduced permanent exclusion to less than half of what it used to be. And we know, unfortunately, that trajectory for young people who are permanently excluded from school is not a positive one. So all of those things we hope over time provide opportunities for the limited resources available for community policing to be redirected, we hope, to early intervention as well, rather than always responding to cases which have become so severe as to lead to permanent exclusion. So the wider impact for us and in the community has been very much that raising of aspirations. That raising of aspirations is the belief that something can be better, it can be different, that there can be more choice. because the immediate firefighting of having to deal historically with behaviour on the ground, challenging behaviours in the community, antisocial behaviours at night and at the weekends, truancy from school, those things have reduced for us in our local area. We are able to work far more collaboratively at looking at early help and prevention, identification early of those young people at risk of becoming exploited, and therefore seek to prevent that from happening for future generations. We know, and it's far harder to quantify, that having a true understanding of ACEs and trauma, and then showing young people how to regulate their emotions and their parents how to parent and be calmer in their approaches, will support future generations, will reduce offending, will provide the society in which we currently work, our community, with more capacity to be more positive and to give every young person choices for their future. More important, I think, than ever at the current time, in the challenges that every young person growing up will be facing in a very uncertain and challenging world because of the global pandemic that we're currently living through. In terms of that wider impact, we work and continue to work with our community policing colleagues to look at how we can drive those partnerships to be even stronger. We know and we feel very strongly that the system needs to be responsive and it needs to be proactive. And resourcing can be very, very difficult in terms of trying to find ways to make that possible. We believe at Leyden that nothing is impossible. Sometimes you just have to drive an incredible amount of creativity to find a way to achieve things. But we know that very much that effective trauma-informed practice will reduce exclusion and negative behaviours in school and will reduce that behaviour in the community as well and allow us to get to a point where preventative measures can be put in place. We know that the resources available to us are helping us very much on a daily basis at the current time whilst we're in lockdown to drive positive relationships in our community, to use our community officers as role models when we go out to do home visits, for example, in a socially distanced way, and remove barriers that have been there historically and built up over time in some very hard to reach areas of our community. We've had great support through the pandemic for our safeguarding staff from our community partnership and policing, and it very much has helped us to build those relationships on the doorstep. I know that having school-based community police officers, even part-time, will strengthen this further. The ability to reduce those barriers again, to build up that positivity, to ensure that those trauma-informed approaches go not just through school but through the wider community, could be strengthened further with a more formal model rather than what we can make work in each local area of our country, where there are lots and lots of pockets of these things happening, but they're not happening universally, and we're missing opportunities. It would undoubtedly create a more responsive and a more proactive system to support our young people, to drive to make our country a better, more effective, more tolerant society at the current time. So in conclusion, I know this is not a soft option. Trauma-informed practice, some people frown upon, they see it in tension with the drive for high standards. It absolutely, for me, is not that. It is about high standards. Having high expectations and challenging human personal behaviours is the best possible form of care we can give our teenagers when they're coming through school and in our wider society. To not approach it punitively, but to drive at the responsibility for one's own behaviour is to care greatly for the development of a young person. This is never a tick box exercise. It's never done. It's cultural change. It's transformational. And it requires us to take time, to think, to reflect and to inquire. But what it does do, I know, is it supports really effectively every individual in my school, but our most vulnerable pupils in society, and it puts them at the forefront of our thinking. We are not seeking to apportion blame or shame, but to show our young people and their families and our wider community how to take responsibility for themselves, to make choices that are positive ones, and support them to make changes for themselves which will be for the better. Not to tell them what to do, but to help them to reach those decisions collectively. I know our community policing partnerships are key to the wider success of this and the potential impact for trauma-informed practice in our schools, in local areas and nationwide. I know that through strong communication, through care, through compassion and through driving that through everything we do, we achieve the highest possible standards of human behaviour and we transform things for the future. Thank you very much.